Alright guys, what's up? What is up, my AP Govers? Today we are talking about how the government manages the economy. If you guys love economics, I am going to say that this is going to be your favorite lecture of all time. You guys are in 12th grade, think of all the lectures you've had. I know you guys are almost done. Think of every single lecture that you've had throughout your whole high school experience. This is going to be your favorite one. Your absolute favorite one if you like economics. So today we're talking about how the government manages the economy. How does the government manage the economy? Well, there's two different types of economic policies. We have fiscal policy as well as monetary policy. These two words do not mean the same thing. I know a lot of people will get these confused. They'll use these two words interchangeably. However, in fact, they are not the same thing. However, it's a little confusing because they are both about money. So you have fiscal policy. Fiscal policy deals with both taxing and with spending. So think of budget stuff. Think of how the government taxes and spends that money, spends that revenue that they have, or maybe spends money that they don't have. And this is conducted by both Congress and the president. So we see two different branches of government here dealing with budget matters. And then we're going to move on now to monetary policy. Monetary policy is just the regulation of the money supply in America. So the people that deal with this are the Feds or the Federal Reserve Board. This has been on a test. I have seen this on a test. Who regulates the money supply? It's the Federal Reserve Board. So think of America. Think how America has a big pot of money. The Federal Reserve Board is essentially in charge of regulating how much money is in that pot. So they could take money out of that pot, or they can put money in. How are they going to put money in? Well, you're going to go to the printing press, baby. Go to the printing press, and they're going to print money. Something else that the Federal Reserve Board will also do is they're going to adjust interest rates to increase or decrease inflation. Maybe the economy is not doing that good, so hey, you know what? Let's decrease these rates to make it easier for people to maybe buy a car, buy homes, so on and so forth. Now, how on earth did the government develop through economic policy? Well, that's an awesome question. Think of the Constitution. Guess what? In the Constitution, it gives Congress the power to regulate interstate and foreign commerce. Where is this going to be in the Constitution? Drum roll, please. It is Article 1, Section 8. Article 1, Section 8. You have the interstate commerce clause in there that gives Congress, notice it says Congress, the power to regulate interstate and foreign commerce. Think back to United States history. Think back to your class last year with American history. So think of the Industrial Revolution, the Gilded Age. So you have guys like John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan. All these guys, they're not necessarily going against the law. Maybe some of them are kind of going against the law, but they're doing a little bit of shady things. The government is allowing them to do this. Maybe their factories are not safe, or maybe they are making maybe a little bit too much money by having a monopoly, or maybe something like that. Now, the government's going to be a little hip to this. They're going to say, wait a second, you know what? We're not so sure that this is fair. So as a result of the Industrial Revolution, as a result of these laissez-faire type economic policies that they had during the Industrial Revolution, they're going to change this up a little bit. They're going to start to regulate the economy a little bit more. So they're going to break up trust. Remember Theodore Roosevelt, the great trust buster. And then you have Taft. You have Taft after him, after TR. Now, Taft is actually going to break up more trust than TR, even though TR gets the title of the trust buster. But you're going to see regulation with meat, within the meat industry and drugs. Remember how you have the rat poop in the meat and stuff, just disgusting stuff going on. Well, of course, there's going to be, the government's going to want to regulate this more to ensure that its meat is safe. Regulating railroads as well is going to be another example. So during the after the Industrial Revolution, remember the Progressive Era, that's where we're going to see the government start to regulate the economy more and more. Then it's going to continue to regulate the economy more and more with the Great Depression. So in the 30s, we're going to see high unemployment rates, upwards 25, even 30%. A lot of banks are going to fail, farm crises, deflation. So these things are going to demand more government. They're going to demand more government to step in and go, bam, we need to fix this. Bam, we need to make sure that we need to make sure the banks are not failing. Bam, we need to make sure that the people are working. So during these two eras, we're going to see a lot of government involvement within the American economy. And during the Great Depression, we see a very famous economist uh, by the name of John Keynes. John Keynes, big dude for the economy. Big, big, big. If you're into economics, if you're pursuing maybe like an economy degree, or maybe you want to get into accounting or maybe investing or something, you got to know about John Keynes. Really, I would say our world's three biggest economists. You guys know him. You have Adam Smith, laissez-faire. He's this idea. I came up with the idea invisible hand, where the government, the economy, should be laissez-faire, hands off, and the invisible hand is going to control the economy, meaning like nothing, just the economy itself, just by trading and buying stuff. Somehow the economy is just going to kind of control itself. So that's Adam Smith. Wealth of Nations was his book, and then you have the famous Communist Manifesto with Karl Marx. A lot of people don't consider him an economist, but I will, for sure. So socialism, communism, this idea that, hey, you know what, the government actually should regulate everything. This is going to be basically opposite of what Adam Smith is. The government should have its hand in every little particular thing in the economy. Now, Keynes is going to come in during the Great Depression and say, well, you know what? Yeah, the invisible hand has a good point. Yeah, the government should kind of be involved in the economy. So he's going to find kind of like an in-between, if you will, of that. So when the economy is not doing so good, then you know what? Then the government needs to come in and then start spending. So Keynes is going to suggest that the government could manipulate the economic health of the economy through its level of spending. It says in hard times, the government should increase spending, even if this means running a large deficit. Now I'll explain this in a second, to stimulate the economic health. In inflationary boom times, the government then should decrease spending to cool down the economy. So what Keynes is essentially saying, guys, is that if the economy is not doing so good, the government needs to start spending money. Why? Well, think about this. Think of the Hoover Dam. Great Depression is going on. Well, if the government hires workers and it spends money on that project, guess what? People are making money. What are they going to do with that money? Well, they're going to buy and purchase items, and that's going to lead into an increase of the economy. The economy will become healthier as a result of that. So the government's going to take that money. They're just going to take money. They're going to spend it. They're going to spend it on jobs. They're going to spend it on whatever. And this is going to bolster the economy. This idea, which is not new to us, it was new back then, but it's not new to us with Obama, with Bush. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is going to be with John Keynes. Again, whenever the government's not doing, or whenever the economy's not doing so good, the government needs to step in and increase spending. That's Keynes. Now, there is going to be some difficulties with this. And I think the biggest thing is that, well, when the economy starts doing good, it's going to have a very difficult time decreasing that spending because people are getting used to it. They're saying, oh, this is awesome. The government's giving me this job, bam, bam, bam. Well, if the economy's doing good, according to Keynes, then they need to step back spending. Well, people are not going to like that. So it is difficult to cut it politically. People will not like it. We'll talk about entitlement in a little bit, but this helps to explain why we have had such a high budget deficit lately. Crazy numbers with Obama, Bush, Reagan too. So think of this, the economy crisis of 2008 and 2009, Obama is going to be president during this time, once again led to Congress passing stimulus and bailout packages in order to jumpstart the economy. It's still around today. So Keynes very much is not dead. The government's still not doing this. The government is still very much doing this. And I think the reason why they are doing it is because this was successful. Keynesian economics was successful during the Great Depression to more or less get us out of the Depression. And that's going to be really mainly with World War II because the government's going to spend a ton of money within factories for World War II. Anyways, all right, so the opposite of Keynesian economics is what we call supply-side economics. I'll get into what this actually means, like the demand versus supply later on in the year. but it's called supply side economics. Now, this is more or less the opposite of Keynesian economics. So, with Keynesian economics, you're going to see a lot of liberals support this idea that the government should step in and should bolster the economy by way of spending. Now, those that believe in supply side economics are going to say no. The government should not step in, but the government should actually step out. So, the definition of supply side economics: cuts in taxes will produce business investment that will compensate for the loss of money due to the lower taxes. Tax rates will be lower, but businesses are going to boom. Unemployment will go down, incomes will go up, and more money will come into the treasury. So this is also called Reaganomics. Trickle-down economics is another term that it's called. But the idea of this is that, okay, so people are working. You have businesses, a lot of small businesses. Well, if the government says, hey, we're going to cut your taxes by whatever, let's say this will never happen, but down to 10%, I don't know, 10%. Well, guess what that means? That means that now businesses are going to have more money in their pockets. When businesses have more money in their pockets, they're going to hire more workers. And now that they're hiring more workers, those workers can spend money in the economy, and everything is going to be rainbows and ponies. It's going to be awesome according to those that believe supply side economics. So trickle-down economics is another way that, or another term for it. Reagan is going to be a huge proponent of this, and he's going to do this in the 80s. And it will bolster the economy in the 80s, absolutely, for sure, just like how Keynes bolstered the economy in the Great Depression. However, there's a problem with this. This was good for the economy. However, they were not accompanied by spending cuts. So really, our debt's going to increase a lot during the Reagan era, as many of you know, from $1 trillion to $3 trillion. So which one is right? Well, if you're a Republican, you're going to say that supply side economics are right. If you're a Democrat, you're going to say Keynesian economics are right. But it's really just whatever your opinion is. Both have worked. Both definitely have worked. I think it just really depends on the era of history that you're in to see which one's going to work better. But so that's supply side economics. Tax cuts under George W. Bush have prompted concern that they did contribute to the rising national debt. And these actually did. To tell you a quick story, I think I was in middle school when George W. Bush cut the taxes and gave everybody a tax cut. My mom, my dad were going, woo, woo, woo. We got, we have extra money now. But my mom and dad didn't spend the money. They saved it. Now, a key part of this is you got to spend the money. Well, if nobody's spending the money, then the economy is not going to do that good. So people were saving the money, not just my parents, but mostly everybody was as well. So that's why I think the Bush tax cuts did not work in the early 2000s. But all right, so here's some modern developments within economic policy. So we're going to see a push for a balanced budget amendment. Sounds like a good idea, right? That the government should balance the budget. Who would have thought? But they're going to say that we should do this by way of an amendment. So high deficits have led to believe that Congress needs to be tied down. They need to be tied down. They're crazy. There are a bunch of crazies in there. And they need to be tied down to a constitutional amendment that's going to require that spending not exceed income. So this idea that, hey, Congress should only spend money when it gets money. Congress gets a buck. All right, they got a buck. Now they can spend a buck. Not this idea of, oh, we're a bunch of money in debt, but we still need this, so let's spend it. That's not what they're proposing here. So supporters say that this is the only way to end the spending bias of Congress, and that it is the only way to overcome the political difficulties of cutting spending. So will this balanced budget amendment happen? No. It's not happen. Will it happen? I doubt it. We'll see. So opponents of the balanced budget amendment say that, hey, you're messing with the Constitution. This is not a good thing. If you do this, if you make this idea necessary, well, what happens if we're in a crisis? What happens if we get bombed or we get attacked, or if two airplanes fly into the World Trade Center? One is flying for the Capitol building and ends up not going in there. But what happens if a crisis happens? If a crisis happens, then according to this amendment, we won't be able to spend any money. So That's what opponents are going to say. They're going to say, hey, in times of crisis, we do want to ensure that we can spend money. Now, other people may say, well, what happens if we put like a little amendment in there? Let's put an amendment on the amendment saying that, hey, well, if we have this amendment of balancing the budget, that'll be in place. But then in times of crisis, well, then bam, then it's okay to spend the money. That doesn't really quite work, because then Congress will just come up with a way to say, oh, we're in times of crisis. We have a little skirmish going on in, I don't know, Southeast Asia or something, and bam, let's invoke the congressional crisis part of the amendment. But so that's not really going to work. But we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with it. So it's proposed. It was proposed. It was voted down in the House, and then in the early 90s. Another option is going to be the line item veto. You guys remember the line item veto? The president can pass a bill with basically crossing out parts of that bill. So, oh, maybe he doesn't like that. Or maybe he doesn't like that. He's going to cross it out. Now, do we have this? No, we don't. We do not have this. Will it happen? We'll see. I don't think so, but that is a proposal, because then the president would be able to say, you know what, I really like this, but I don't like how Congress had $20 trillion for this area of the country. So that is perhaps a way that this could be fixed. The PAYGO system, we've talked about this earlier in class, but the PAYGO system was that kind of what I was talking about before. All right, well, let's pay as you go type of thing. We got $1, let's spend it. Not this idea of, oh, well, we don't have $1, but we need to spend it anyways. So it was passed in the early 90s. Now, the economy was doing pretty well when it was passed. However, this expired, I think 2002, I want to say. So the expiration of PAYGO and the war on terrorism in Iraq in the early 2000s, this is going to lead to even more huge budget deficits. We're crazy, just totally crazy now. Over 18 trillion, I know, in debt, which is different than deficits. But so this is going to even, the economic crisis in 08 and 09 is going to even be more. Trade policy, so increasing trade deficit. What the heck is a trade deficit? Well, if we buy more stuff from a country than what we export, so if we're importing more than we export, we have a trade deficit. Do you got that? So if we're bringing in more stuff from another country than we're pushing out or selling out, we have a trade deficit. So imports are going to exceed exports. That's what that means. So this is caused by China. China is definitely expanding their economy. Guess who China's number one customer is? That's right, the United States. We're going to see rising oil prices as well. So, guys, America needs oil. They want oil, so they're going to go ahead and go overseas, and they're going to get it. So, trade deficits have led to calls for what's called protectionism. Protectionism is basically just the idea that, hey, we need to protect our interests at home. We need to protect our small businesses at home. And we shouldn't buy products that are abroad. Now, from a businessman's standpoint, let's just say you're making a t-shirt. You're making a t-shirt, and you can make it for 20 cents in China, or you can make it at $8 in America. What are you going to do? Think about money. I mean, it's all about money. So, of course, you're going to go overseas for the 20-cent t-shirt. However, those that believe or that are calling for protectionism saying, hey, well, let's do this. Let's raise the tariff for products that are coming in. So then that t-shirt isn't actually costing 20 cents overseas. Maybe it's costing $7.50 or whatever. I don't know. But so this whole idea of the trade deficit, how it's easier, of course, or not easier, but cheaper to make things overseas. It's going to result in what's called offshoring. You might have heard this word, offshoring. So there's going to be more of a push for retrade rather than what I was talking about with tariffs. That's probably not going to really happen, of this idea of protectionism and all these tariffs, but there has been more of a push for free trade rather than for tariffs. So these are some examples. You don't have to know all these. One that I would say you should know is NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. You guys may have learned that already, but Free trade, the free trade agreement, North America free trade agreement. Which countries are in North America? We have Canada, America, and Mexico. There is free trade between those three countries due to NAFTA. WTO, World Trade Agreement, or excuse me, World Trade Organization, GATT. GATT. What president was GATT under? Was it Truman or Eisenhower? I think that was one of those two. But so you don't need to know all of these, but NAFTA, I would say definitely you should know. But all right, guys, so that's it. Online lecture for today. Make sure you write down these notes and that you did write down these notes, because I'm going to stamp them next class. So make sure you take care of business with that, and I will see you next class. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions.